Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Russo's Rides. If you're in the market for a new bike, or at least a new to you bike, and the Suzuki DRZ400 Supermoto is on your list, you're going to want to watch this video before you make a decision. Because in this video, I will do a walk around of the bike, I'll point out some of the specs and features of the bike, and then we'll jump on and go for a ride, and I'll tell you what my thoughts and opinions of the bike are, and maybe a couple suggestions on maybe who this bike is a good choice or would be a good choice for, and who maybe wants to pass on this bike. Alright, before we get started on the bike, just a little bit about myself and where I'm coming from. So this is my second bike. I purchased it in August of 2020, new. My first bike was a 2006 Kawasaki Ninja 650, which I purchased new in 2006. And I had it for 4 years and then sold it, and I think I had about 13,000 miles on it. So that's where I'm coming from. And so I didn't have a bike for about 10 years. This is my first bike in 10 years. All right, so on to what you guys came here to watch, to talk about the bike. So the heart of the bike, a 398cc liquid-cooled, single-cylinder, carbureted engine. It's hooked up to a 5-speed gearbox. Let's see, up front we have 17-inch wheels on 120 millimeter tires, and there's Dunlop Sport Maxes. The suspension is fully adjustable Showa inverted fork. The brakes up front, it's a single disc, 300 millimeter dual piston setup. The lights front and back, whether it's tail lights or turn signals or anything like that, are your traditional incandescent bulbs, not LEDs. And I will say the headlights kind of useless at night, but I don't really ride at night too much. Fuel tank, it looks small, it is small, 2.6 gallons, which isn't a lot, but this bike does get really good fuel economy, so you could probably get maybe 150 miles out of a tank. Let's see, moving back, rear wheel is also 17-inch. The tire is a 140 millimeter, and the brake is a single disc. I think it's a 240 millimeter. Seat height, and this is really important if you're not tall. Seat height 35 inches, so that's a pretty tall seat. Weight of the bike wet, which that's ready to ride, is 320 pounds. Some other things to point out. So the seat is not stock. This is an aftermarket seat from Sargent that I purchased, and so isn't this rack and the bag. I'll put a picture of what it looks like stock. The stock seat is, it's nice looking. It's kind of this two-tone seat, and it looks nice. It's not really comfortable. It's much narrower. So if you're going to do any type of riding, anything more than 30 minutes, I'd say you want to switch that seat out. It does have passenger pegs. Obviously this bike's really not set up for a passenger, but you can ride two up. My girlfriend's been on for short rides, and it's doable, but it's not really comfortable. Helmet lock, it does work. I've used that. I point out the seat, this is aftermarket, but even the stock seat, it's not removable, at least not removable without tools. So you can't just pop it off, and there's no storage underneath. So that's why I think the rack and the tail bag is a big improvement. Just because the tank is really so small that you really can't fit any type of tank bag. There's just no place for it. So I think the rack and the tail bag is a good option. A little bit more about the engine here. So because this is carbureted, it has a choke. I've never had an issue. Some people complain about, it's carbureted. I haven't had an issue yet, and it's December, and I've started up on cold mornings, and it's fine. Here you have a fuel selector, so it's on, reserve, or into prime. I think when you have it set to on, I think it's 2 gallons, and if you were to run out, you could switch it over to reserve. Well, first you have to prime it, but then switch it over to reserve, and I think you have about a half a gallon left, so just enough to get to a gas station. I think that is it. The handlebars and gauge cluster, kind of your traditional setup. Over here on the left, you have your high and low beams, turn signal. Turn signal's not self-canceling. horn, no hazard button over here on the right. Your on and off kill switch, start your engine. The gauge cluster itself, pretty simple. You have your 4 lights over on the left. One is a turn signal, one's neutral indicator, one's high and low beam, and then one is a temperature gauge. Sorry, a high temperature gauge. The instrument panel itself is pretty limited. I mean, it's digital, but it's not TFT or LED or anything like that. And all it offers is speed, clock, and then trip. You have trip and odometer, or you can switch this to trip A, trip B, but pretty straightforward. No tachometer, no fuel indicator, no gear indicator, no miles per gallon, anything like that. So there are quite a few buttons. You might be saying, well, what are all these buttons for? So the clock can be a stopwatch, and the trip meters, A and B, can actually be set to count down or backwards. So all the buttons are there to configure that. It's pretty complicated. There's 20 pages in the owner's manual dedicated to just this. So all I do is I leave it set on trip A, and then whenever I get to about 120 miles, I just fill up and reset it. I think that is it. Oh, no traction control, no rider modes, no ABS, none of that type of stuff. It's a very basic kind of analog bike. So right now I'm going to put the camera down, shut it off first. Put the camera down, and I'm going to jump on the bike just to show you the seat height. So like I said, it's 35 inches. I'm 5'7". I probably weigh, without any gear, 145, 150 pounds. So you can see when I jump on it, I'm on the balls of my feet, or the tippy toes. So if you're much shorter than 5'7", this probably is not the bike for you. All right, what else? I think that's kind of it for features. I was not dead set on a supermoto when I got this bike. I was looking at other bikes, but if you are dead set on a supermoto, there aren't a ton of options. There's this, and this is the cheapest one. All the other ones are from the European bike manufacturers, so not Kawasaki, Ducati, Aprilia, KTM, Husqvarna all have a supermoto. They're all larger engines and quite a bit more money. I'll put the specifications up on the screen. This was $7,400 brand new. I think all of those, the cheapest one is almost $11,000. So this is the cheapest option if you want a supermoto. But actually, starting in 2021, I don't know if they're on sale yet, but Kawasaki is coming out with a supermoto called the DRZ400 SM, based on the KLX Dual Sport. So it's a single-cylinder 300 or 292 cc engine. I think it's coming out in 2021. At least that's what it says on their website. And I think that's coming in at like $6,000. So that would be your cheaper option if you did want a supermoto. All right, I think that's it for the bike. Walk around, so let's jump on it and go for a ride. All right, so here we are on the bike. Unfortunately, as you can tell probably from the audio is voiceover. I tried a couple times with the microphone and the helmet, a couple different locations, but the quality was just pretty poor. A lot of wind noise, and you couldn't hear me. So unfortunately, until I get that straightened out, it's going to have to be a voiceover. I wanted to do it again, but right after I made this video, a few days later, we got 14 inches of snow, so the riding is going to be put on pause for a little bit. But all right, away we go on the Suzuki DRZ400 Supermoto. So my first impression when you jump on the bike and throw a leg over it, the first thing that jumps out at you is the seat height. Again, for someone like myself, I'm not a tall person. I'm 5'7". I weigh probably about 150 pounds with my gear. So you throw a leg over, and it's a long reach to the ground. And luckily, the bike does squat a decent amount. But even when you get on the bike and your weight squats it down a little bit, I'm still on the balls of my feet. So that was a little intimidating at first. So if you're shorter than I'd say 5'7", this bike could be a bit of a struggle for you. But I mean, you get used to it. Of course, once you get moving, it's not an issue at all. It's really just kind of for slow maneuvers, parking lots, things like that. And even that, you can get used to it. But the benefit of that tall seat height is once you do get moving, and hopefully you can kind of see here in the cameras, you have a pretty commanding view of the road. There's nothing in front of you, there's no windscreen or anything like that, and because you sit up so high, you can see around smaller cars really easily. So I'd say that's a huge benefit, especially if you're going to use this this bike as a commuter. I think it's kind of really nice on the road, going in and out of traffic, seeing around traffic. So that's one of the benefits. But it is something you notice when you first jump on it, especially if you're not a tall person. So what we're going to do here right off the bat is do something that the DRZ is not great at. We're going to jump on the highway real quick, and I want to point out that's maybe one of its shortcomings. So if you're going to be spending a lot of time on the highway, or you want to be doing a lot of long distance touring, probably not the bike for you. It's really not a power issue. You'll see me here as I come onto the on-ramp. There's certainly no lack of power. It can get up to highway speeds really easily. It can easily go to speeds that are going to get you in trouble, meaning it can almost maybe go triple digits. But it's just it gets a little dicey at that speed. And because it only has 5 gears, even when you're cruising at a normal highway speed of say 65 to 70, the bike is pretty high in our RPM range, so it's just not super comfortable. Short little stints on the highway is totally fine, right? Like right here, we're cruising at 60 miles an hour. It's totally fine. But because it's only has 5 speeds, it's not happy on the highway. I'd say it's happiest at say like below 65, but you'll see me here, I'm accelerating up to 80, over 80 miles an hour, totally fine. And it's got power to do that. It's not super comfortable at that speed. One, because of the gearing, and two, because it's so lightweight. That 320 pounds is really awesome. It makes the bike super easy and maneuverable, but 320 pounds on the highway going 80 miles an hour, with no fairing, no windscreen, combined with the fact that I'm a pretty light guy, makes the bike a little sketchy at high speeds, especially if it happens to be windy out. So yeah, I think it's a great commuter bike, but it's not a great commuter bike if you're going to be on the highway a lot. It's really more secondary roads, things like that. Like I said, 60 and below is really where it likes to be, but it can go on the highway. So I guess another initial thought when you get on the bike, it is a really kind of punchy bike. I like to say it's a quick bike. It's not a fast bike, meaning from say 0 to 50, it's really quick because it's so light and it's got a lot of torque. But after that, it kind of runs out of speed, so to speak. But it is a very kind of punchy motor. The one thing, I think it's geared pretty low and the gears are pretty close together. So, when you get up to say 45 miles an hour, you're already in 5th gear. So it's kind of geared. It's really not geared for that high speed stuff. Another thing you'll notice, because of all the torque in the engine, it's a lot of engine braking. I find myself not really needing to use the brakes as much as you might expect. Again, because the bike is so light and because it has so much torque, the engine braking is really strong, and I find that you really don't need to use the brakes as much as you might think. So that's a benefit. So who do I think this bike would be good for? I think this bike would be really good. I think it could be good for beginners as long as you're not short. I'd say even if you're my height and this is your first bike, say you're 5'7" and this is your first bike, maybe not a great choice because you're going to be on the balls of your feet and you're not going to feel confident. But if you're say 6 foot tall, I think this could easily be a great first bike. It's comfortable. The riding position is very upright, and your hands basically, or their handlebars are basically right where my hands fall. They're just really comfortable. And with the seat, the stock seat is kind of garbage, but with the aftermarket seat, I can be on this bike all day, and I don't have any issues. I think it's really comfortable. So I think commuters it could be good for. I think people that want to, a first bike it could certainly be good for as long as you're not short. Someone that I think also would be a great second bike, something that's kind of just to mess around town in and have fun with, just because it is a super fun bike. And one of the things, I guess, like that doesn't really, if you look at the numbers or on the specs of the bike, it's kind of underwhelming. It's kind of old school. It's carbureted. It's got 5 speeds. It doesn't have ABS or traction control or rider modes or any of that fancy stuff. So like on paper, it doesn't sound anything special. But when you get on the bike and ride it, there's just kind of something about it. It's really fun to ride. It's really easy to ride. And all of that kind of goes out the window when you're on the bike, because it is just really fun, awesome bike. So would this bike not be good for? Short people. If you're 5'5", this bike's just not going to work for you. People that are looking to do long distance touring, this isn't going to work for you. If you want to be carrying a passenger on a regular basis, this bike is not going to be for you. But I mean, I think it does have a lot to offer, and I think it's a really fun bike, and it's a unique bike. I think I've seen one other DRZ Supermoto out on the road, but they're pretty unique, I'd say. So overall, I don't regret the decision. I would buy this again. When I was looking to buy a bike or get into a bike, I had a couple. This wasn't initially on my radar. I initially was looking at the Kawasaki KLX 250, the dual sport, and the camo or digital camo, whatever it's called, color. But they were really tough to find. I couldn't find one in the summer of 2020. I guess everyone was buying a bike. And then the other bike I really liked, and I still do like, but again, it was impossible to find, was the Husqvarna Svitsvilen or something. I think that's how it's pronounced, 401. That was a really cool looking bike, and I still think that's a cool bike, but I just couldn't find them. So I ended up with this bike, and I am very happy with it. So I think it's overall good choice. One thing I'm not quite sure is the value, right? So this bike is, now it's 2021 basically, and it's $7,500. And you think to yourself, is it worth $7,500? And I'm not sure it is. I don't know. It's a super cool bike, but for $7,500, you don't get a lot of stuff. And there's lots of bikes that are cheaper, like some of the Kawasaki, the Z line, or like the Honda CB500F, I think it is. But there's a lot of kind of standard or naked bikes in this range, less money, that you get more stuff. So you get ABS, and you get fuel injection, you get 6 speeds, you get a better instrument panel with more information. You don't get things, most of those bikes don't have things like fully adjustable suspension though. So I guess it depends on what you're interested in. The one thing I will say, it does seem like a lot of money up front for what you get, but they also do seem to hold their value really well. I was looking at used ones. There's not a ton for sale, but the ones that are for sale, they're asking a lot for bikes that are, a couple of years old that have a decent amount of miles on them. So, maybe it's a little bit more upfront, but you might get it on the back end if you try to sell it. So I think that's all I have. Again, sorry for the audio not working. I know everyone likes to hear the engine and all that, but I'll get it sorted out. So hopefully you like this video. This was my first video, and I'm still learning how to do a lot of this editing and audio and all that. It's a lot easier. Sorry, it's a lot harder than it looks. I will say that. But if you have any questions or comments, either about the bike or suggestions about the video, please feel free to put some comments below. And I would love for you to subscribe. I know this is my first video, but hopefully you're watching this and there's many more videos up when you watch this. Because I do plan on doing some more videos. I want to do some videos on the modifications I've done to the bike, so the seat and the rack and the bag, and also maybe some of my gear, so like the helmets and gloves and jackets and all that. So I do plan on doing some more videos. So I would really appreciate if you'd like and subscribe, and join me for some more videos with riding with Russo. So until then, I hope you enjoyed this video, and remember, life is more fun on 2 wheels.